Hello guys, this is Paul McWhorter from TopTechBoy.com, and we are here today with lesson number 30 in our incredible new tutorial series where you are learning artificial intelligence on the Jetson Nano. I will need you to get out a nice enormous mug of iced coffee, and I will need you to get out the gear that we ordered in last week's program. Now, if you haven't ordered the gear yet, you need to hop back on over to lesson number 29, or I will go ahead and put the links again down below. But to move forward, we are going to be doing some pretty exciting stuff, but you will need a few pieces of hardware. If you were diligent and ordered your things last week, you should already have them. And so what I am going to need you to get out is I'm going to need you to get out your bracket, the pan tilt bracket, the little connectors, the little steel connectors that connect to the bracket, the set of screws, and then the servo itself. And so we will actually be needing 2 servos for today's assembly, so I need you to get out both of these servos. Hey, want to take a second and give a shout out to you guys who are helping me out over on Patreon. You guys keep me in premium coffee beans, and you also allow me to keep my studio gear and the gear that I'm training you on up to date. And so really appreciate you guys that are helping me. If you're not helping out yet, look down in the description below. There is a link over to my Patreon account. Think about hopping over there and hooking a brother up. But enough of this shameless self-promotion. Let's jump in and let's remind you of what we are heading towards. Now, in today's lesson, we are just going to get the physical assembly done for this pan tilt camera controller. But what we are doing is we are training this thing to track on an object. Okay, so as I move the object up and down and left and right, the Jetson Nano recognizes it and tracks it. Okay, that is really exciting. But before we can jump in and start doing the, before we can jump in and start doing the programming and coding for this, we need to get our physical assembly done. So let's see if I can get you a view of that. Okay, I think that this probably would work. I'm going to have to work a little bit on seeing if I can get something for it to focus on. Okay. And then I'll try to keep the focus where at least you guys can see what I'm doing. But I'm going to go ahead and get out this first servo. I think you guys ordered 4, and it's going to take 2 for this project. So let's get the first servo out. And then I think that that's all that I'm really going to need from that bag. And then over here, I'm going to need this little bag of the little horns for the servo and the little screws. Okay. And I am not exactly sure if these screws are the same size. I think probably all these little black screws in here are the same size, and that'll make it a little easier. But let's go ahead and dump out all of our stuff here. So what we're going to need to do is we're going to need to start by putting this horn on the servo. And it's that moment of panic where it doesn't feel like it is going to go on there. But let's see. This one is just a little bit tight, but it is going on there. So what you guys might have to do is you might have to play around with it a little bit. But I think I'm going to get that on there. All right, I think I'm going to go ahead and put the screw in, and maybe I can kind of tighten it down with the screwdriver. But these things usually fit a little easier than this. But this one, either the servo or the horn, is a little bit not the perfect size. But let's see if we can tighten that down. Yeah, that is going on down on there nicely. Okay, so I think that that will work like that. Okay, now what I need you to do is get out. If you look in your set of brackets, there are two brackets. There's a smaller bracket and there is a larger bracket. Okay, this is the larger one, this is the smaller one. I need you to get out that smaller bracket. Okay, and now we are going to attach this to the bracket, and I need to try to keep my orientation. This actually is a lot harder than you might think. And let's see, already I think I am in the wrong position. So I've got those. You know what? I think I have already... No. Okay, this will work. Okay, so you see how you have these legs, okay? And those legs are pointing down, and you have 1, 2, 3 holes. You want this screw to sort of sit down in this hole as such, okay? And now you can see that you can line up those 4 other holes. So let me just make sure. How do I make sure that you've seen what I've done? I've connected the servo horn to the servo with this little screw. Now we're going to turn this as such, and we want this screw, okay, we want this screw to go down in this hole. And so we're going to do that. And then we are going to need to get the holes lined up, and then we're going to turn it over because the screws have to come in from this side. Okay. So with the feet pointing upward, we now are going to put 4 little screws into the 4 holes on the servo horn. Do you realize it took me like 3 days to figure out how to do this the first time, because there weren't any instructions with this, and it is just not intuitive. But I'm hoping if you watch me do it, you'll have a lot better experience. Or maybe not. Maybe I'm trying to get all 4 of those. Okay, now I'm going to, with this pointed up, I'm going to begin to screw those in. And I'll just see if I can kind of get them started. You know, have you ever done one of these jobs where you really need 3 hands? I think this is one of those jobs where you really need 3 hands. But I think I've got 2 of the screws started, and then that one's 3, and then this one's 4, okay? So let me go ahead and tighten those up. I think I could use a little bigger screwdriver. And you guys, as you're playing with this, try to not turn the motor itself. It's not good on servos, and a lot of servos you can strip them if you turn it manually. It needs to be driven internally with the motor and not manually with your hand. So let's see if we can go ahead and tighten all 4 of these. And I'm trying to hold the bracket where I don't end up spinning the motor as I'm tightening. That would need some more tightening. Okay. All right, so I believe I've got all 4 of those tightened, okay? And so if you look like this, you've got all 4 of those tied on there. Okay, now let's see, what is the next thing that I need to do? I think the next thing for me to do is, this would be like this. Okay, I do not want to put Okay, so now I'm going to need the long, thin screw out of the bag and a bearing. So you see you have a bearing and you have a long, thin screw, and then the corresponding nut to the long, thin screw. And let's see, I think that looks like this one. Okay, so let's look at this. You see long, thin screw, bearing, and nut. That is what we are going to be working with. And so now, as I have this, like this, okay, now I'm going to need to mount this to the other bracket. And so the other bracket is going to sit like this. Okay, there's no left and right, but you just need it sitting like this. And then you need to bring this in to the center hole here. Okay, so you see how there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 holes. You want this big hole over the center of those 5 holes. Okay, and then the long, thin screw. And I don't know if there's any washers in there. I don't believe I see any washers, and so we're just going to bring the head of the screw from underneath there, and it seems like we're going to have to drill it in, or tighten it in. Okay, so do you see what I'm doing there? On the side that the horn is on, okay, in the center of those 5 holes on that side, I got to drive the screw in. And it's a little bit tight. I thought it would just go right through, but no, I'm going to have to tighten it in. And I wish this camera would maintain better focus, but it's just impossible for me to do the assembly and keep the camera autofocus working good. Okay, so now that is all the way in. All right, now what I need to do is I need to get our little bearing. Right here. Okay, so I've got the bearing, and now I get the big bracket. Okay, the big bracket. And you know what? I just have to, this is so backwards to me. Okay, so now I'm seeing it and my hands are moving with my eyes correctly, and so I can do it better. Okay, so you see on there is a ridge on that bearing. That ridge needs to go on the outside, and you need to put that like that. So the ridge is on the outside in the big hole, and now we are going to come in, and this is going to come the screw through the bearing, and the bearing seated in the hole in the large bracket like that. Okay, and I am looking for, but not finding, a washer. See, I would feel better. No, we don't need a washer. Okay, so you see it's just like that. Are you able to see what I did? Okay, the lip is on the outside, and then the little screw is going through there. And now what we need is the top nut to put on there. And I don't have a suitable wrench, so I'm just going to kind of have to hold it with my finger. And then I'm going to come through the other hole, so I'm coming straight down on it. And then I really want to tighten this up. And you really kind of want to tighten it. You don't want to strip the head of the screw, but you do want to get that tight, because you really don't want a lot of play there. Okay. Now, right now, there's a certain amount of play, but don't panic. I panicked the first time I put this thing together, but in the end, it is going to be okay. So then I'm going to come back like this. All right. Kind of have it like this. And now what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to get my other servo number 2. And similarly, servo number 2, I need to put the horn on servo number 2. Okay, and this one equally is very tight. You see, I don't want to force it on like this, like you wouldn't want to like tap it on because you could damage the gears inside. I would rather pull it on by putting the screw in, and that will allow you to cinch it down pretty tightly. So we will do it that way. All right, there we go. Okay, so now I just want to tighten it so it will pull it on down further on that hub. Okay, and that's going very nicely this time. Okay, so you see as I have it tight, there is not much of a gap when you get that screw tightened. This camera is not wanting to focus very well. There it goes. See, not much of a gap when you get the thing down on there. Okay, now what we need is, so look at my orientation here. Yours should look something like this. This is just what we put that bearing in. And now this needs to slide in as such. Okay, so let me show you exactly how this goes because it's kind of tricky. Okay, do you see that the little clips on the servo are on the outside? You can't put it in like trying to get, you can't try to do it like that. The servo clips have to go on the outside, and then you want to line up that screw that you just put on, to the servo horn is lined up with that. And now we need to spin it until we get those other 4 screws lined up. And now I'm going to try to get those in. I like to start at least the 2 opposite sides before I begin to tighten. Well, actually, I kind of like to start them all before I try to tighten them. Okay, there we go. Got 2 more. And what you're going to see as we begin to tighten up on this, it's going to take a lot of that play out of this thing. Okay, and just go ahead and tighten all 4 of those screws. And I think I have a little bit of an issue, but I don't think it'll be a big one. I think I'll have to probably spin this one time. Because you see, I need to now put the screws to get the servo firmly mounted here. Okay, and so this side is not going to be a problem. So what we'll do is we'll just get 2 of the normal size nuts and bolts. 1, 2. So what do I mean by normal ones? These are the kind of fat ones and not the little long thin one which we already have used. Okay, so now I've got those. So what I need to do is I need to put those like this. So the bolt is going to come down starting from the outside, right? So we're starting on the outside of the servo, and then we got to screw it on in, and then we'll have to come back and put the nut in on the other side. But again, it's kind of tight just to get it in like that. Okay, so that went on kind of nice, and now this other one. And then we'll come back and put the nut on the other side. Okay, and so now I'll try to show you. You see we got two places we need a nut. Right there. Try to kind of get those spun on. Okay, got that one started. I think I should have done this one first, but there, I got it. So now we'll come back over here and we'll tighten these things. If you have a small little wrench, that would be really good to hold the nut with as you're tightening with the screwdriver. But I will just use the old fingernail method and come back later when I have a wrench. Okay, so now we have that servo to the bracket. Now you can see what the problem is a little bit, that I need to get in here and do these, and I don't have much room to work. So I'm going to have to spin this one way or the other to gain access to those. And so normally you don't want to do that, but in this case we'll live dangerously. Okay, so now what you can see is this other side of the servo. Now I can put the nuts and bolts there. So I'm going to need two more of the fat nuts. And two more of the bolts, the corresponding bolts. Okay, so there we have them. So we will again start on the servo side, putting in from the servo side, and we will need to drive it in with the screwdriver. That hole is just barely big enough for that to go through. It's almost like you're threading that hole as you're tightening it. Okay, and then the other one. But the nice thing about this is, man, when you get it put together, there's very little play. There is very, very little play. Okay. So now let's go ahead and drive those in, and then we'll have to put the nut on, and then we'll take a look at this. Okay. Coming in with the nut. That one, yeah, there it goes. Okay, so now I will hold it with my thumbnail and tighten, and that's nice and tight. And now that is nice and tight. So, okay, let's look at this. This thing we have assembled now. Okay, we have got this thing assembled. And so now how does this work? Let's see. Now I think I need to probably go back to the other way so it's not upside down for you. Okay, so now let's see if we can show how this works. This bottom servo is what your base is, so your bottom servo needs to be mounted to something. Now you can see what I did was I used a 3D printer and I printed this base, and so for mine, now this is still operating live, so that's kind of hard. So you see on my bottom one there, I created this base to slide down in. Okay, now you could make something out of wood, or you could kind of tape something together, but you can see what you're going to need is you're going to need something for this bottom servo to slide down in and hold it. Maybe you could put it on a board, and glue it on there or tape it on there or something, but that bottom one needs to be mounted. Now, if you have a 3D printer and you've used my Fusion 360, you could design something up, but I know a lot of you don't have that, so you're just going to have to improvise. I mean, most of you could do it with wood, but you've just got to have a little slot for this thing to fit into so that it stays secure. That is the base. Now, normally, like I say, you really don't want to spin these things from the outside, but I can show you now. The camera would fit up here, and then this would be tilt, okay, and then this would be the pan, okay. What you can see is this one would go from looking straight out to like really looking up. And so I think what you would want to do here is you would probably want to come here and loosen this screw, and then you would want to rotate it rotate it 90 degrees so that instead of going from like here, the 180, it starts here and then would go all the way down. What you would probably want to do is start with it out so that it would go from here to here. Okay, and so what that would mean is taking this screw out and in this most forward position, rotating this 90 degrees where it's pointing that way, and then put the screw back in. Take the horn off, rotate it 90 degrees, and then put the screw back in. You really can't figure that out until you assemble it. Now, the bottom one doesn't really matter because you can point it wherever you want to start with, so that will work. But this bracket needs to be 90 degrees forward because you see that's kind of as far as I can go, and you wouldn't want it to start here. You would want it to start like this, rotating it like that. So if yours ended up like mine, take this one center screw out, pull the horn off, rotate it this way, put the horn back on and the screw back in. Okay, and then you should be good to go. Okay, so this will then allow us to do what our goal is, which is to have this slick tracking pan tilt servo where we can track an object of interest. I don't have a very good camera shot there. Okay, guys, let me know if you got this thing put together. And now what we've got is we've got our two servos, one for pan, one for tilt. And then what we're going to do next week is we're going to come in and we're going to get the PCA 9685 servo control board. We're going to get that hooked up to the Jetson Nano, and then we're going to get the board hooked up to the servos. And then next week, what we're going to be able to do is we're going to be able to pan and tilt controlled from the Jetson Nano. Now, we're not going to be doing active tracking. That would then be the week after that. Okay, appreciate you guys tuning in. It's just like you probably, I hope you didn't find this lesson tedious, and you probably could have figured it out on your own. But kind of like when I tried to figure this thing out, I didn't even have a picture of what it looked like, and I had an awful time figuring it out. And so hopefully by watching what I did here, hopefully it will help you have a little bit better luck putting this thing together. Okay, this has been a little bit of a tedious lesson, but we've got our mechanical assembly done, and we'll get back in and start doing some pretty cool coding next week. Paul McWhorter from TopTechBoy.com. If you guys like this lesson, think about giving me a thumbs up. Think about subscribing to the channel. When you subscribe, make sure you hit the bell so you'll get notifications for my future videos. Paul McWhorter from TopTechBoy.com. I will talk to you guys later.